So, sex. Alright. I know that it's been 2 months now, but I assure you we never left. I felt really bad that all of us had to do our finals, that we had to do our thesis, which I did, by the way. Yeah, congrats to everyone in PsyPoints. I will say personally, yeah. And if you guys can say congratulations to us in the comments, that'd be really, really nice. But I did miss this. I am rusty, I'll admit. But a few good things happened. We have a new editor now. It's Miggy. Say hi, Miggy. Yeah. Do whatever you want to introduce yourself. Feel free. Do as you wish. I'm not the editor. I'm just happy you're in PsyPoints, and I'm just happy to be back on this chair. So, now let's actually get back to the video. I missed you all. Blessed that we're not monetized yet on any social media, so we can have this talk without being scared of anything. I will say though, please do subscribe, like, share our videos. We actually do want to be a bit bigger on the scale of popularity, So sex ed. Despite being known back in my day for being about seeing what herpes looks like for the first time and that I shouldn't get people pregnant, sex ed is actually so much more than that. A good portion of it is actually quite psychology based, since sex plays such a huge role in human life that it's influenced our ways of engaging in life since the dawn of human life. Despite this, sex ed has played a very minor role in the lives of most of my previous batchmates growing up, for a vast majority of people in the Philippines, and way beyond all over the world. So today, I want to give sex education the proper highlight it deserves. Going beyond what herpes looks like and to, not get people pregnant, we're going to talk about its taboo history, the mental health implications bad sex ed can have over time, and the societal effects that come with not improving it if left unchecked. From there, maybe we can then see where sex education can improve. So, just like Sigmund Freud, I want to talk about sex today.
Excuse me, everyone. Sex! Now that I have your attention.
You don't have our attention.
Sex has always been a rather interesting topic in world history, with polarizing views depending on the time period and culture. In fact, a history of views on sex would be enough to fill an entire video in its own right, but I'll try to stick to the basics as much as possible. For example, in ancient times, for the Greeks and Romans, sex was something that was at both parts acknowledged openly, but was also seen as licentious and obscene, depending on the context. However, in other places, for example, the Kama Sutra, written during India's classical period, is something that has to at least be mentioned when talking about sex, since it's the complete polar opposite. It's actually a book that's all about living life well, the nature of love, finding a life partner, and maintaining one's love life, and enjoying life, all of this which naturally includes sex. Christianity, which we'll talk about much more throughout this video, traditionally holds to the idea of sex being a sacred thing that should only be done between married couples for the sake of conceiving children and childbirth. Because of this, sex has become something either celebrated or treated as a taboo that should only be done under special circumstances. It's raining so hard and I'm so sad. Rocky wants to say hi again. It's been a while. Say hi, Rock. Hi. Say hi, buddy. Nothing? Okay, that's fair. There have been times throughout history where sex and sexuality was more accepted or less accepted in different cultures and parts of the world, and areas where it starts becoming a taboo or being accepted, vice versa, is typically a reaction to the previous view on it, like how the conservatism of the Victorian era was seen as a reaction to the perceived decadence of the previous periods way back when.
Do you even know all the ways a lady can be seduced?
Here in the Philippines, Our views on sex were heavily influenced by the values imparted to us by the colonizers, most especially the highly conservative and religious Spanish, who held very traditional views on sex based on their faith, which last up to this day. That faith being Christianity, Catholicism, hence are very reserved, closed, and even up to this point, very hard to talk about topic. There are two quotes in the Bible I specifically want to highlight that really change how we perceive sex here in the Philippines and as a whole in the entire religion. In Genesis 1:28, it was written that God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." In other words, have lots of sex for the sake of procreation. And the second one I want to highlight: let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and the adulterous. You can imagine with beliefs and statements like these that are highly emphasized in the Bible and such, how this then affects the views of a highly conservative and religious society like the Philippines when it comes to the topic of sex. Which is to say, a lot of people generally don't like to talk about sex in general because of this. They largely hold to and emphasize this view of it being sinful and wrong outside of a very specific set of circumstances, even though a lot of them do sex anyway behind closed doors, which is very ironic. Now that we have an idea of why these types of beliefs are so adamant, especially in this country, right? These do over time affect the collective psyche of everyone within the country itself. Now, first I want to talk about the short-term concerns that this creates for people's mental health. Now, in the short term, the first main thing is that communication skills in regards to sex start to become a bit difficult to manage and converse with between other people. Now, age-appropriate sex education is crucial for bodily awareness as we grow up knowing the proper names and functions of each of your body parts, especially your genitals, are important as they influence your behaviors and inhibitions or desires. Without proper knowledge of such things, it creates significant barriers of communication and language usage in describing one's experiences. It leads to gaps in knowing and describing certain feelings in intimate or sexual contexts to one's partner or their own bodies. Sex education does not only cover the act of sex, but also in establishing healthy relationships and boundaries with ourselves and others. And without discussing these types of topics, this can then lead to problems in discussing things that are important when trying to display our own needs to others. These include, in particular for females, the discussion of the menstrual cycle and how one's hormones can get affected during that time, and explaining that to others to assure them of their own changes and behaviors over time during that period. Again, which is perfectly understandable, it's perfectly okay. I am a male, so maybe it's hard for me to discuss this in pure detail, but what I am telling all of you is that this is completely normal. How to explain what you don't want to explore or do is also as important in avoiding STIs, unwanted pregnancies, avoiding dangerous situations, and making sure both parties are enjoying themselves without breaking boundaries of any kind with each other. An example is replacing actual anatomical terminology with other softer words under the guise that words like penis and vagina are bad words.
Just want to have a mature conversation.
How can we have a mature conversation when you can't even say the word penis?
I can say the word peen.
Say it.
Yes.
What?
Penis.
You said pureness.
Now, this may result in the misinterpretation of an actual bad experience, such as sexual harassment, which isn't okay, and all of our means of trying to avoid talks about sex shouldn't endanger other people because of our innate desire to not talk about sex in the first place. The second in The second major point I have in terms of the short term and mental health wise is in decision making. A lack of overall bodily awareness makes it difficult to be firm with decisions, leading to unenjoyable personal experiences, boundaries easily being broken, and at worst, sexual harassment being ignored or dismissed entirely. Something that most therapists notice with victims is that they only realize this happened to them only after analyzing the situation during the therapy session, which is, well, it's just a shame when it's something that could have been avoided altogether with prior knowledge. And now each of those individual victims have to live with that. But how about how these can affect people's mental health in the long term? Now, the first major one that comes to mind is porn addiction. Without proper sex education, adolescents and even children are left to their own devices to explore and figure things out for themselves. This may lead to irresponsible internet surfing, where information is widely accessible and misguided conversations among peers often occur. Moreover, when one has an addiction to porn, it desensitizes addicts from actual sexual situations. They have seen sexual scenarios of increasing sexual intensity that's difficult to replicate if possible at all to do so in real life, that they begin to have sexual dysfunction during times of sexual intimacy. Because quite frankly, they've seen something more extreme and vanilla doesn't really cut it out for them anymore. It numbs them of the experience of sex and makes opportunities for them to have normal sex difficult. Basically, the arousal and release they have with porn might begin to take precedence over real human social contact. And I've been talking about dysfunction, but that's just the kindest result that can occur. Kids thinking some types of sex are common slash normal, or the idealization of how body parts should be presented, sexual life may veer towards the fictionalized and risky sex that they're exposed to through porn or even through media, movies like 50 Shades of Grey or any unnecessary sex scene that you can find in movies. Now, this can have implications on how they view sex and even practice it amongst themselves and their peers. At worst, just doing a technique that's not really fun, and at worst, this can lead to misinterpretation of non-sexual situations as sexual, the pushing of other people's boundaries, unsafe practices, and unrealistic standards of normal sex and one's body image. Porn is a high-budget fantasy of the act of sex that may unfortunately not translate well to reality, like fantasies of a robber or taxi driver engaging in sex for an hour with an innocent woman when looked at in a real-life lens is actually way more horrifying and illegal compared to its porn counterpart. But if that's the only way some people are exposed to ideas of sex and how to engage in it, then it normalizes these behaviors collectively to the human psyche, and that's not okay. These behaviors include treatment of the opposite sex as well, mainly women, where instead of seeing one or the other as a person first, they see them as more of a sexualized caricature. The basis of this being significantly noticeable, again, with women and lesbian women most of all, where women are often sexualized in situations of all kinds, with the worst cases of people acting upon those desires, regardless of the woman's feelings, because they don't see them as a person first to begin with. The way that many see them is on a sexual basis first, rather than as people, as humans.
But respect women. Respect women.
Respect women.
Now, proper sex education has been proven to improve one's self-esteem and delays a person from experiencing their first sexual act. Alternatively, without proper sex education, kids feel a curiosity that doesn't stop them from experimenting at such a young age. Tweens who've just reached adolescence feel a pressure to look good, or rather like someone sexually appealing. Additionally, all the awkward phases of reaching puberty become more embarrassing when, in fact, it's completely normal. Girls shouldn't feel ashamed of getting their first period because it's normal. Pimples, body odor, a change in voice, these are all normal to experience, but because it isn't being talked about, it feels like a taboo. This isolates the young individual and makes them feel ashamed of themselves. Due to the stigma around sex ed, we aren't able to properly educate people on how to stay safe during sex in this country. This leads to no use of birth control, lack of accessibility to contraceptives, and eventually pregnancy. Teenage pregnancy is unfortunately not uncommon, especially those in the lower class and rural areas of the Philippines. And with this, now we also have an overpopulation problem as a result. Sex work is not really considered as actual work in the country until now. There's a confusing view towards sex workers in the Philippines, especially with the terminology and the definitions that are used within the laws involving sex work. They're either classified as criminals that need to be punished by law, or women to be pitied and saved for their life choices. A simple Google search that doesn't lead to the hub or whatever website you use can help begin the journey to understanding and destigmatizing the topic quite a bit. Though the major population isn't interested in doing that research first before doing the act themselves. And although the government has recognized the need to have proper sex ed and has introduced the comprehensive sexuality education to our early education system nowadays. Despite this, though, there are still issues with implementing this new curriculum, as there's been a lack of materials and properly trained facilitators and educators to teach the topic properly. So, with all this said, what do we do from here? As hinted at somewhat in the totally not unhinged discussion on conservative history and religion in the Philippines, there's a strong moral opposition towards the idea of sex outside of marriage and discussing sex outside of marriage as well. This translates into what is feared by many conservative Catholics would be as a degradation of morals in society if sex was a more open and accepted act. Funnily enough, this notion ought to be challenged by the very idea of sex education itself. While the more conservative Catholic populace, including the church itself, may fear a rise in premarital sex, it would still run counter to the idea of a degradation of morals in society, as being taught proper sex education would ideally make approaches to sex become more responsible and lessen issues such as underage teen pregnancies and the like, while also improving public health, as practices of safe sex may work to counteract the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. Overall, a move towards proper sex education would be a rather pragmatic one on the part of the church to prevent far more pressing issues regarding sex over their views on premarital sex. Is the personal recommendation of this video anyway. Now, the full improvement of sex education means more than just the conditions of STDs and how a baby can affect your life. This includes being able to communicate about body parts without shame, to talk about sex and sexual needs in an open way, how to ask for consent, the establishment of boundaries, and the goals of engaging in sex together beyond just personal enjoyment. Educational institutions need to realize this and fully prepare the existing sex ed programs to be informative and practical from an educational standpoint in all aspects other than just the spread of STDs. Even schools with more religious backgrounds have to fully provide conversations surrounding sexual topics in order to properly discuss them and prepare students on what is reality. Now, the thought of sex can be fun and tempting for people. It's a biological need, and that's perfectly understandable. So, why scare people from learning about it? The long term effects of ignorance are too great, and in countries like mine, the results are apparent. I just hope a topic as serious as this is given the proper respect it deserves. Not because it's funny, not because it's scary, but because it needs to be said for everyone's health. I'd like to actually hear what you guys think instead. What do you think? Should we be more open about talking to sex? Or do you think that all of the teachings of the church should keep us reserved? We should stay conserved. It should remain as this. Tell us how you feel in the comments below. And this is a serious one. This is a big one for. I really miss this, and I really do want to talk with you guys again to make more videos again, and that's what I promise I'll do together with my team, who are all finally back to start making videos again, including some of our newer members. Hi again, Mickey. Till then, I hope you all have a great day ahead. Please stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.